Meghan Markle was already causing whispers inside royal circles long before the public ever realized how messy this whole story could get. And honestly, the deeper you look into it, the weirder some of these connections start to feel. Because now in 2026, people around the palace are quietly asking questions they probably hoped would never come back up again. And a lot of those questions somehow lead right back to Prince Andrew. Now, obviously, nobody is sitting there claiming Meghan and Andrew were best friends, secretly hanging out at private dinners, or anything dramatic like that. But what people are talking about is the overlap, the circles, the networking world. Both of them moved around in years before Harry even entered the picture. And apparently that overlap is what has certain people inside the monarchy extremely uncomfortable right now. Because here's the thing, Andrew lost everything. Titles gone, royal privileges gone, public image completely destroyed. King Charles basically erased him from official royal life. And when somebody falls that hard, especially someone who spent decades around billionaires, socialites, celebrities, and powerful people, everybody suddenly gets nervous about what they know. That's where Meghan's name starts creeping back into conversations. And honestly, some parts of the story are difficult to ignore. One detail people still talk about is that weird moment where Harry claimed Meghan thought Prince Andrew was just some random palace staff member when she first met him. And I'm sorry, but even royal watchers back then were like, wait a second. Meghan already knew Princess Eugenie before Harry. That friendship was public. Eugenie and Meghan were already moving in similar circles. So, how exactly do you know Eugenie pretty well, but somehow don't recognize her father? That explanation never really landed with people. And the reason it keeps resurfacing is because of what's been coming out over the past year. Palace insiders, biographers, former staffers, everybody suddenly seems more willing to hint that Andrew may have already known things about Meghan long before the relationship with Harry became public. Not necessarily personal secrets, more like awareness, knowing the environments she moved in, the elite networking spaces, the luxury events, the people connected to those worlds. And if you really think about it, Meghan absolutely was operating in high-end circles before the royal family. She was ambitious, connected, constantly networking, attending events with wealthy people, media executives, influencers, celebrities. That was literally part of climbing socially in those industries. Meanwhile, Andrew spent years floating around the exact same kind of spaces, so people naturally started wondering whether their paths crossed earlier than anyone admitted publicly. Now, add this to the timeline because this part is actually important. Back in 2016, when Harry and Meghan were secretly dating, somebody from Andrew's household reportedly leaked the relationship to the press. Not Harry's side, Andrew's side. That's the part that still confuses royal commentators. Why would Andrew's people even care enough to leak Harry's relationship? And not only leak it, but leak it in a positive way. The coverage painted Meghan like this glamorous humanitarian actress entering the royal family love story. It almost felt prepared, like somebody wanted the relationship public immediately, but under controlled optics. And honestly, that timing feels suspicious to a lot of people now. Because if Andrew's household already knew Meghan through overlapping circles, suddenly that leak starts looking a lot less random. Some insiders even believe it may have been a subtle warning shot inside palace politics. Like certain people already understood the situation was more complicated than Harry realized. And apparently Harry didn't realize much at all. That's another thing people close to the palace keep hinting at. Harry thought resistance from William and Charles came from jealousy, class issues, or racism accusations later on. But according to people around the monarchy, there were deeper concerns happening privately. Quiet conversations, questions about Meghan's background, connections, networking history, social circles, things Harry was never fully brought into. And honestly, William's behavior makes more sense when you look at it from that angle, because William kept distance from Meghan very early. Same with Catherine. Very formal, very careful. And now, sources are claiming Catherine especially became uncomfortable after realizing how many elite circles seemed to overlap between Meghan's world and Andrew's world. What really pushed the story into overdrive recently were those Epstein-related documents that resurfaced again in late 2025. And no, Meghan and Harry were not accused of crimes or anything like that, but their names appearing anywhere near Andrew-related discussions instantly sent royal watchers into detective mode all over again. One email reportedly referenced an article involving Harry speaking publicly about Andrew's Epstein scandal. And apparently that single story generated millions in publicity value. That alone showed how tied together these royal controversies had become behind the scenes. Even when the Sussexes were trying to separate themselves from the monarchy, the media still kept connecting their story back to Andrew. But then another detail came out that honestly made people stop and stare for a second. Virginia Duchess lawyer once said publicly that he wanted to depose Meghan Markle because she might have knowledge connected to Andrew's social world. Now think about that carefully. Lawyers do not randomly throw celebrity names around for fun in serious legal situations. If Meghan's name came up at all, it means somebody believed she potentially moved around environments where Andrew also operated. Again, not accusing her of wrongdoing. That's important, but it absolutely fueled speculation that they're social. Worlds may have intersected long before Harry came into the picture, and suddenly people started revisiting all those old rumors again, especially the yacht photos. For years online, there were constant discussions trying to connect Meghan to wealthy yacht circles, luxury parties, and elite networking events from the early 2010s. Most fact-checkers said the women in those viral images were not Meghan. And to be fair, a lot of those internet theories became exaggerated very quickly. But what caught attention wasn't even the photos themselves. It was how aggressively the entire conversation got shut down almost immediately every single time. And that made people even more curious, because usually royal gossip burns out naturally after a few days. But in this case, media outlets moved incredibly fast to kill speculation, almost too fast. And critics kept asking the same question. Why was the palace so nervous about people discussing overlapping social circles? Because honestly, wealthy elite networks are smaller than people think. Celebrities, aristocrats, billionaires, executives, socialites, they all end up crossing paths repeatedly, especially in London, New York, Toronto, and LA circles. Meghan absolutely spent years trying to elevate herself socially and professionally before Suits exploded globally. Andrew spent decades embedded inside elite international networks. The overlap itself is not shocking. What becomes awkward is the possibility that palace insiders knew about those overlaps much earlier than the public did. That's where King Charles comes into this mess. Publicly, Charles acted ruthless toward Andrew. He stripped titles, removed privileges, pushed him out of royal lodge, basically erased him from public royal life. But privately, apparently, the relationship is far softer than people expected. Reports keep surfacing that Charles still communicates with Andrew behind closed doors and hasn't fully cut him off personally. And people inside royal circles think there's a reason for that. Containment, not kindness. Because if Andrew truly knows details about old, elite social networks connected to Meghan, Harry, or palace vetting processes, Charles probably does not want him angry, isolated, and speaking freely. That's why some insiders believe Charles is walking this careful tightrope. Public punishment for optics, private management for protection. Meanwhile, Catherine reportedly wants absolutely nothing to do with any of it. Sources say she believes Andrew should be completely frozen out permanently because every little reopening of communication creates another potential problem later. And honestly, I kind of understand why Catherine would think that way, because the monarchy already looks chaotic enough right now. Harry and Meghan left royal life completely. William barely speaks to Harry. Andrew became one of the biggest scandals in royal history. Charles is trying to protect the institution while fighting health rumors and constant public pressure. The last thing this family needs is another wave of stories connecting Meghan and Andrew through old social networks. But here's the uncomfortable part. Nobody around the palace seems able to fully control anymore. People are talking because the timeline genuinely raises questions. Meghan knew Eugenie before Harry. Andrew's household leaked the relationship. Lawyers connected Meghan's name to Andrew's social world, and multiple insiders now keep hinting that palace concerns started much earlier than the public realized. That combination is exactly why this story refuses to disappear. And honestly, when you line all of this up together, you start understanding why the palace keeps staying so painfully quiet about Meghan and Andrew specifically. They'll deny photos. They'll avoid questions. They'll release carefully worded statements when absolutely necessary. But they never fully address the bigger issue everybody keeps circling back to. Did Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew move around the same elite social world before Harry? Because the palace clearly does not want that conversation expanding any further. And look, even if the answer is simply yes, they crossed paths occasionally at high-end events. That alone creates uncomfortable optics now because of everything attached to Andrew's name. Suddenly, people start asking whether Meghan was fully vetted, whether Harry was told everything, whether William and Charles had concerns earlier than they admitted publicly. That's why this situation feels so tense inside royal circles right now. Apparently, Charles and Catherine even had private discussions late last year, specifically focused on Andrew and the risk of him speaking too openly. And according to insiders, the fear isn't just about old Epstein headlines anymore. It's about connections, timelines, shared networks, information that could reopen years of royal drama all over again because Andrew has nothing left to lose now. That's the dangerous part. When somebody loses titles, status, reputation, public support, they become unpredictable. And palace insiders reportedly know that very well. They can't fully control him anymore. They can only try managing the fallout carefully. Meanwhile, Meghan staying silent about Andrew has become noticeable on its own. And people absolutely notice patterns with Meghan because normally she speaks very openly on major issues. She talks about transparency, media narratives, unfair treatment, protecting women, institutional problems. But whenever Andrew comes up publicly, total silence. No opinion, no indirect comments, nothing. And to royal commentators, that silence feels strategic because even mentioning Andrew opens the door to dangerous follow-up questions. How much did Meghan know about those circles? Did she ever interact with him socially before Harry? Did palace investigators privately ask her questions nobody knows about? Was William's hesitation actually connected to concerns Harry never fully understood? Those questions become explosive very quickly, especially because Harry himself always framed the situation emotionally. In his mind, the family didn't support Meghan because they didn't understand her, didn't trust outsiders, or didn't like how fast the relationship moved. But according to multiple royal insiders now, there may have been entirely different concerns happening privately behind the scenes. And honestly, Harry sometimes comes across like the only person who didn't fully understand the bigger picture around him. Because while he was publicly defending Meghan and fighting the media, other people inside the palace may have already been quietly looking into overlapping social networks, old connections, and background details they considered sensitive. That would also explain why William seemed cold so early. People always assumed William disliked Meghan personally. But what if William simply knew more than Harry did? What if palace advisors were already briefing senior royals about potential complications connected to elite circles Andrew also moved through? Suddenly, William's behavior starts looking less emotional and more cautious. And the Andrew leak from 2016 still hangs over everything, because that detail is just bizarre no matter how you look at it. Harry and Meghan had only been dating privately for a few months. Then suddenly, Andrew's household leaks the story to the press before Harry wanted it public. Why? That question still has never been answered properly. Some people think Andrew's side wanted control of the narrative early. Others think somebody already recognized Meghan from elite networking circles and understood the relationship could become messy later. And some insiders believe the positive media framing itself was intentional, almost like certain palace players wanted the romance publicly established before deeper questions started surfacing privately. Honestly, it sounds like one giant royal chess game. And now in 2026, the monarchy is stuck living with the consequences of all of it. Because every time Andrew's name re-enters headlines, Meghan's old connections get discussed again. Every time Harry criticizes the royal family, people revisit what palace insiders may have known years earlier. Every new leak creates another round of speculation about who protected who stayed silent, and who understood the full situation from the beginning. And the craziest part, we probably still only know a fraction of what was actually happening behind palace doors. That's why this story keeps growing instead of disappearing. Too many strange overlaps, too many unanswered questions, too much silence from people who usually defend themselves very loudly. And until somebody finally explains why Andrew's household inserted itself into Harry and Meghan's relationship so early, people are going to